"You're not our class. They asked if you could sit somewhere else." That's what my daughter whispered to me, on her wedding day. Her lips barely moved, but every word cut through me sharper than any blade. My hands were still in my lap, holding the damn gift box I'd spent hours picking out. I thought I was doing something good. Something a father should do. I didn't even get to finish my sentence before she dropped that bomb on me. And just like that, I wasn't the proud father of the bride. I was the embarrassing reminder of where she came from. They didn't even have the balls to tell me themselves. No, her new in-laws, the Montgomerys, had my daughter do it. The same daughter I used to carry on my shoulders through the state fair. The girl I worked double shifts to put through college. The one whose scraped knees I kissed, whose every birthday I never missed. That daughter. Before I go on, if you're into stories where people get exactly what they deserve, and not always in the way they expect, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I've got a few tales under my belt you won't want to miss. Now back to that night. The banquet hall was straight out of a movie. Chandeliers, white roses, a quartet playing some classical stuff I couldn't name if you paid me. Everyone was dressed to kill. Even I had rented a tux, black, bow tie, polished shoes. I might have been a blue-collar guy, but damn it, I cleaned up all right. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I was there for my daughter. But clearly I was the odd man out. The second I walked in, the groom's family gave me that look, you know the one. Half smile, all judgment. Like I'd tracked mud into their country club. They were all money and manners, with fake warmth and 2 white teeth. I tried to brush it off. Told myself it was just nerves. Told myself it didn't matter. Then came the seating. I stood there with my little name card in hand, looking for my spot at the family table. Couldn't find it. Waiters dodged around me, balancing plates of salmon and champagne. That's when my daughter pulled me aside, gave me that line, "You're not our class." I didn't even know what to say. I felt the floor shift under me, like I'd been dropped into some alternate universe. I managed to mumble something like, "It's your day. Whatever makes you happy." But inside, I was screaming. I got seated at table 18. You know where that is? Right next to the damn kitchen doors. I could smell dishwater and burnt coffee the whole time. My table mates were a pair of distant cousins and some college roommate I'd never met. I watched as the bride and groom laughed with the Montgomerys at the front table, toasting champagne, eating filet mignon. No one even looked my way. I sat through the toasts. Listened to the groom's father drone on about legacy and class and heritage, words so thick with snobbery I thought I might choke. My daughter laughed at all his jokes. She clinked her glass with his and gave him a kiss on the cheek. I just sat there, nursing a glass of water. I wanted to leave. God, I wanted to stand up and walk the hell out. But I didn't. You know why? Because I still believed, somewhere deep down, that maybe, just maybe, she'd come around. That maybe she was just caught up in the moment. That she'd come over, give me a hug, say she was sorry. She didn't. She danced with her new father-in-law. She danced with her stepfather. Not me. I sat there watching her spin around the floor, all smiles, like I didn't exist. Like the man who raised her, fed her, kept the lights on all those years, was invisible. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. Not until later that night, when I overheard the Montgomery matriarch tell someone, she's finally with people of her own level. That's when the anger came. Not hot, explosive rage. No, this was the cold, quiet kind. The kind that settles deep in your bones. The kind that starts making plans. See, I'm not a rich man. I don't wear Rolexes or drink imported wine. But I know who I am. And more importantly, I know what I've done for the people I love. And if they want to forget that, fine. But I won't let them erase it. Not without a reminder. After that night, I couldn't sleep for days. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, my daughter, in that ivory dress, laughing with people who couldn't care less if I dropped dead at that table. And all I could think was, how the hell did we get here? Because it wasn't always like this. When she was little, she used to call me her hero. I remember one night when she was 7, she had a nightmare about monsters under the bed. I sat on the floor beside her for 2 hours, flashlight in hand, checking every corner of her room. She clung to my arm the whole night. I told her I'd always protect her. I meant it. We didn't have much. I was just getting my landscaping business off the ground back then. I'd leave at 5 in the morning and come home after dark. My hands were calloused, my back hurt constantly, but I never complained. Because every dollar I made went to her. Dance classes. New shoes. Tutoring. Braces. Whatever she needed, she got it. Even if it meant I skipped meals some weeks. Her mother, God rest her soul, was the real glue. Sweetest woman you'd ever meet. She died when our daughter was 14. Car accident. Quick. Brutal. Left a hole in both of us. But I never let it swallow me. I grieved. Then I got up. Because my daughter needed me. And I gave her everything. I didn't date. I didn't bring strange women around. I didn't blow money on beer and toys like some guys I knew. I worked. I cooked. I cleaned. I showed up to every parent-teacher conference. Every recital. I sat through Little Mermaid Jr. twice in one day because she begged me to. I thought I was doing it right. But somewhere along the line, she started pulling away. It started small. She didn't want me dropping her off at school anymore. She started rolling her eyes when I said something cringe. Stopped inviting me to events. I figured it was just teenage stuff. Then she got into that private college upstate. That's when everything changed. She came back that first Thanksgiving wearing designer boots and talking like she was raised in a country club. She didn't say it, but it was clear. She thought she'd outgrown me. I remember asking her if she needed help with her tuition that semester and she said, "No, someone's covering it." I didn't ask who. I didn't want to know. Spoiler alert, it was the Montgomerys. Turns out she met him, her now husband, at some fundraiser gala for his family's real estate empire. Of course she fell for it. I mean, the kid looks like he was printed in a country club 3D printer. Polished, pretty, full of charming nothings. The first time I met them, I brought a bottle of good bourbon, small batch, locally made. The groom's father looked at the label, smirked and said, "That's cute." Then he poured himself a scotch that probably cost more than my monthly rent back in the day. That should have been my first red flag. The second was when my daughter started correcting how I spoke in front of them. She'd interrupt me mid-sentence to rephrase something I said, like I was some unpolished prop she was ashamed of. It was subtle at first. Then it wasn't. But the wedding night? That was the full picture. That was the moment I knew I wasn't just not welcome. I was officially beneath them. And you know what? That's fine. I don't need their table. I don't need their champagne. I don't need to sit under their chandeliers to prove my worth. But they were gonna remember me. Not out of revenge. Not out of pettiness. Out of principle. Because if they want to play the class game, they should have checked who built the ground they're standing on. The first time I met the Montgomerys, I knew exactly what kind of people they were. You ever shake someone's hand and immediately feel like you're being judged? That was them. Every single one of them looked at me the way a cop looks at a busted taillight. Something wrong, something beneath them, something they could write off with a ticket and keep driving. It was a dinner at their estate. Yeah, estate. Not a house, not a home, an estate. White columns, a circular driveway, a fountain in the front yard. I half expected Scarlett O'Hara to walk out the front door. I pulled up in my work truck. Because, surprise, I don't own a Lexus or a Mercedes. Their valet looked at it like it was leaking oil just by existing. I almost laughed. Inside, it was marble floors, chandeliers, and portraits of dead relatives staring down at you like they were silently asking, "What are you doing here?" The groom's mother swept in wearing pearls the size of grapes. His father, Gregory Montgomery, was in a tailored suit even though it was just family dinner. The kind of guy who probably sleeps in cufflinks. They introduced themselves with stiff smiles. His mother gave me the classic up-and-down scan, like she was cataloging every flaw in my appearance. His father shook my hand with just enough pressure to make sure I knew it was a contest, and that he'd won. My daughter sat there, beaming, like she'd been accepted into royalty. She didn't notice how they looked at me. Or maybe she did and just didn't care. Dinner was, well, let's just say it wasn't pizza night. 5 courses, each served on china so thin I was afraid to breathe near it. First course, some kind of soup with foam on top. Looked like dish soap. Gregory asked me about my work. I told him I owned a landscaping company. 30 years in business. Dozens of clients. Hard-earned reputation. He smiled. That smile people give when they don't respect you, but they want to sound polite. Ah, so you work with your hands? Very noble. Very noble. Like I was some peasant who'd shown up to polish his shoes. I could feel my daughter tense next to me. She jumped in quick. Dad's company does really well. He's basically the top in our town. She was trying. I'll give her that. But Gregory just chuckled and said, well, there's a difference between doing well in town and doing well in the world, isn't there? I wanted to snap back. Wanted to tell him the only reason his world even looked good was because of guys like me cutting the grass, trimming the hedges, laying the bricks he walked on. But I didn't. I swallowed it. Because my daughter was watching. Then came dessert. Some fancy soufflé with berries I couldn't even name. Gregory raised his glass, looked me dead in the eye, and said, here's to family. May we always surround ourselves with the right kind of people. The right kind of people. My daughter clinked her glass with his. She smiled. She didn't look at me. That was the moment I realized it wasn't just a one-time insult at the wedding. This was bigger. This was the whole game plan. The Montgomerys weren't just snobs. They were actively pulling my daughter into their orbit, reshaping her to fit their mold. And she was letting them. I drove home that night in silence. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight I left marks on it. I kept hearing his words, the right kind of people, over and over, like a taunt. They thought I didn't belong, that I wasn't worthy to sit at their table, that I was invisible. But here's the thing about being invisible, you see everything. And when the time comes, you strike from the shadows. The wedding reception was supposed to be the proudest night of my life. Instead, it was the loneliest. The hall looked like something out of a royal ball. Crystal chandeliers lit up tables draped in white silk. The air smelled like roses and expensive champagne. A string quartet played in the corner, their bows slicing across violins with perfect precision. Everyone looked polished, glowing, full of smiles. Everyone except me. I held the little card with my name on it, scanning the front tables. The ones with "Family of the Bride" neatly labeled in gold letters. My name wasn't there. I checked again. Nothing. The waiters hustled around me, carrying plates stacked with filet mignon and lobster tails. Then I felt a light touch on my elbow. It was her. My daughter. She leaned close so nobody else would hear. Her voice was soft, but it hit harder than a punch. Dad, you'll be at table 18. It's better that way. Better that way. She didn't even wait for me to answer. She just gave me a small, rehearsed smile, the kind you give when you're apologizing for something you don't really regret, and walked off toward the head table where the Montgomerys were waiting. I found table 18 in the far back. Not just in the back of the room, but right next to the kitchen doors. Every time they swung open, I caught a wave of dishwater and burnt coffee. My tablemates were a distant cousin I hadn't seen in 10 years, his bored wife, and some college roommate of hers I'd never met. Strangers. All of them. I sat down and stared at my water glass. No wine for our table, apparently. No champagne. Just water and lukewarm bread rolls. Meanwhile, I could see the Montgomerys at the head table, laughing like royalty, their crystal glasses clinking under the chandelier's glow. The first toast came. The groom's father stood tall, raising his glass. His voice boomed across the hall as he spoke about legacy, about family, about carrying on traditions. Every word oozed with pride, but not for me. Not for my daughter's roots. It was all about them. Their name. Their bloodline. People clapped. My daughter smiled at him, her eyes shining like he was the only father who mattered. I wanted to leave. I really did. Every fiber in me screamed to walk out those double doors, get in my truck, and drive until I couldn't see those chandeliers in the rearview mirror. But I stayed. You know why? Because some stupid part of me still believed she'd come over. That she'd sit down, grab my hand and say, "I'm sorry, Dad. I shouldn't have done this." But she didn't. She danced with her new husband. She danced with her new father-in-law. She even danced with her stepfather. Everyone but me. I sat there like a ghost. A ghost who'd given up everything to make sure she had this moment, only to be erased from it. At one point, the groom's mother walked past my table. She didn't even look at me. Didn't even acknowledge my existence. Just breezed by, perfume heavy in the air, her pearls glistening under the lights. I thought I couldn't sink any lower. But then I heard it. A voice. Soft, but loud enough. The Montgomery matriarch, leaning toward another guest, saying, "She's finally with people of her own level." Her own level. That was the nail in the coffin. I clenched my fists under the table, my nails digging into my palms. My chest burned, but my face stayed calm. I didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. No tears. No scene. Just silence. But inside, something shifted. Something dark. Something sharp. Because if they wanted me invisible, if they wanted me erased, then fine, I'd disappear. But not before leaving behind a reminder they'd never be able to wash away. After the wedding, I thought maybe things would settle down. Maybe the sting would fade, and my daughter would wake up one morning, realize what she'd done, and call me with an apology. I waited. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. The call never came. Instead, what I got were whispers. It started with a phone call from my cousin. He said he'd run into one of the Montgomerys at some charity gala. "Funny thing," he told me, "they were talking about how you were never really in her life. Said you just mailed in child support checks, but weren't around much. Said her stepdad did most of the raising." I laughed at first. A bitter, humorless laugh. Because if there's one thing I wasn't, it was absent. I was there. Every damn day. I had the sleepless nights, the endless bills, the homework help, the scraped knees. But to them, I was nothing more than a monthly check. Then it got worse. Old friends started calling me, asking if it was true that I hadn't been involved. Parents from her high school messaged me on Facebook, "Didn't know you weren't around much. She always seemed so close with you." That's when it hit me, this wasn't random gossip. This was deliberate. The Montgomerys were rewriting history. They weren't just erasing me from the wedding night. They were erasing me from my daughter's entire story. Turning me into a footnote. Making sure everyone thought they were the saviors who rescued her from some neglectful father. And my daughter? She wasn't stopping them. One night I confronted her. I called, voice steady, trying not to sound like the angry dad. "Why are people saying I wasn't there for you? Why are they saying I just mailed checks?" She paused. Too long. Then she sighed. "Dad, it's not a big deal. People exaggerate. You don't need to get worked up." Not a big deal. That phrase rattled in my chest like a loose nail. Not a big deal to her, maybe. But to me, it was everything. My life had revolved around her. Every sacrifice I ever made was for her. And now she was letting them paint me as some absent, lazy bum. That night, I sat in my recliner with a glass of cheap bourbon, staring at the wall. My mind kept circling the same thought. They think they can bury me. Replace me. Rewrite me. But history has a funny way of fighting back. You can spread rumors, you can polish lies, you can even convince people for a while. But when the truth is carved in stone, that doesn't wash away. That's when the plan began to form. A slow burn. A long game. Not screaming in their faces, not throwing fists at their smug little dinner parties. Something smarter. Something permanent. Something they could never undo. Because if they wanted me gone from the story, then I'd make damn sure they could never tell it without me. When you've been pushed down enough times, you get two choices. Stay there and let them step over you, or get up and remind them who the hell you are. For me, the reminder started with her. My late wife. Her name was Laura. And she was everything. Sweet, kind, the kind of person people remembered long after she left the room. When she died, the whole town felt it. Not just me. Not just our daughter. Everyone. She volunteered at schools, she ran bake sales, she organized community drives. If someone needed a meal, she cooked. If someone needed a hand, she showed up. She was the heart of our small town. And when she passed, I promised myself I'd honor her memory someday in a way that lasted. I'd been sitting on a piece of land for years. A quiet stretch near the lake, with tall oaks and a view that could stop you in your tracks at sunset. Laura used to take our daughter there when she was little. They'd feed the ducks, toss stones into the water, make daisy chains in the grass. That land held memories no one else knew about. Memories worth preserving. I bought it back when business was booming, thinking maybe I'd build a cabin someday. But after Laura died, I couldn't bring myself to touch it. It just sat there, waiting. Now, finally, I knew what it was waiting for. It hit me like lightning one night. I was sitting alone, staring at old photos of Laura, her smile bright as the sun. And I thought, this is where I'll make my stand. Not in their dining halls. Not at their country clubs. In the dirt, in the grass, in the town that actually mattered. A memorial park. Not just a bench with her name on it. I wanted something permanent. A place kids could play, families could gather, a space that would carry her spirit long after I was gone. Trails, gardens, a playground, a small stage for concerts and fairs. And right at the center, a stone monument with her name carved deep, where no amount of lies or whispers could ever erase it. I started reaching out. Called the city council. Talked to local contractors. Quietly hired one of the best landscape architects in the state. I didn't want anyone knowing who was behind it yet. Not until it was done. Money wasn't easy. I drained savings, took out loans, poured everything I had into it. Some nights I'd sit at the kitchen table, bills spread out in front of me, wondering if I was insane. But then I'd close my eyes and hear Laura's laugh. I'd picture our daughter as a little girl, chasing ducks by the lake. And I'd remind myself, this isn't just about revenge. This is about legacy. Because the Montgomerys? They can have their money. They can have their chandeliers, their estates, their little world of fake smiles. What I was building, they could never buy. And when the day came to reveal it, oh, they'd be there, front row, thinking they were being honored. But the truth? The truth would be written in stone. And this time, there would be no erasing me. Once the decision was made, I moved fast. Faster than I ever thought I could at my age. Every day after work, I was on the phone. City council, local contractors, old friends who still owed me favors. I wasn't building a backyard garden. I was building a legacy. And I wasn't about to half-ass it. The land by the lake needed clearing. The brush was thick, and the soil hadn't been touched in years. I hired crews quietly, paid in cash when I could, and made sure nothing about it hit the papers. No big announcements. No photo ops. Just quiet progress. I'd drive out there on weekends with a thermos of coffee and just watch them work. Bulldozers moving earth. Men laying concrete paths. Kids would sometimes ride by on bikes and ask what was going on. I just smiled and said, "You'll see soon enough." Behind the scenes, I was greasing the wheels. The mayor was an old friend of Laura's. He remembered her kindness, how she organized a fundraiser to save his sister's house when the bank was breathing down her neck. When I told him my plan, he didn't hesitate. "Jack," he said, "we'll make it happen. This town owes Laura more than it can ever repay." Hearing that almost broke me. But it also steeled me. This wasn't just about sticking it to the Montgomerys anymore. It was about giving Laura the kind of honor she deserved all along. Still, I'd be lying if I said I didn't picture their faces when the truth finally hit them. Weeks turned into months. The park began to take shape. Walking trails curled through the oaks. Benches faced the lake, perfect for quiet afternoons. A playground went up, bright slides, swings that squeaked in the breeze. Local volunteers came out on weekends to plant flowers. Roses, lilies, daffodils. The place was coming alive again. And at the very center stood the monument. A massive block of granite, polished until it shone in the sun. The engraver worked for days carving the words deep into its surface. In loving memory of Laura, wife, mother, heart of this town. Built with love by her husband Jack. When I saw those words in the stone, I felt something I hadn't felt since the wedding. The city announced the dedication ceremony for late spring. Flyers went up. Local papers ran a short article, nothing splashy, just a note about a new memorial park. Invitations were sent to community leaders, school principals, church groups. And yes, the Montgomerys got theirs. Personalized. Hand-delivered. I made sure of it. They probably thought it was some polite courtesy. That they'd be front and center, shaking hands, looking generous on camera. That they'd be seen as part of the right kind of people, leading the community. But I had other plans. Seating arrangements were drawn up carefully. The first rows, nearest the monument, reserved for family. Not in-laws. Not step-parents. Real family. The ones who bled and cried and sacrificed for Laura. That meant my siblings. My cousins. Old friends who stood by us when times were rough. The Montgomerys? Oh, they had seats. But not in the front. Not even close. Their names were printed clear as day on the back row. Right where they belonged. And the best part? They wouldn't know until the moment they arrived. As the day drew closer, I barely slept. Not out of nerves. Out of anticipation. Every nail driven into the playground, every flower planted along the trail, it was all one step closer to justice. Not the kind delivered in a courtroom. The kind delivered in the open air, under the sun, where everyone could see. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to fight. I just needed to wait. The morning of the dedication felt different. The air was crisp, the sky sharp blue without a single cloud. I woke up before dawn, put on my best suit, simple, nothing fancy, but pressed and clean. I looked in the mirror and saw a man who'd carried 30 years of calluses, sweat, and sacrifice. A man the Montgomerys thought wasn't good enough. Today, they'd learn otherwise. When I arrived at the park, it was already buzzing. Volunteers set up folding chairs in neat rows. The playground glistened in the sun, bright with fresh paint. Flowers bloomed along the trails, their colors popping like fireworks. And right in the middle, covered with a velvet cloth, stood the monument. My heart skipped when I saw it. Even under the drape, it radiated weight. Permanence. People started to arrive. Families with kids. Neighbors who remembered Laura from PTA meetings, from bake sales, from nights she spent bringing meals to the sick. They hugged me, clapped me on the back, told me how proud they were. But I kept quiet. Let them think this was just a community project. Let the surprise hit when it mattered most. By noon, the crowd was thick. City officials stood near the podium. A local news crew rolled their cameras into place. The mayor shook my hand, whispered, "She'd be proud, Jack." I swallowed hard, nodded, and took my seat near the front. And then, they arrived. The Montgomerys. You could spot them from a mile away. Designer suits. Pearls glinting in the sunlight. They walked in like they owned the place, their noses tilted ever so slightly skyward. My daughter was on her husband's arm, glowing in a pastel dress that probably cost more than my truck. She didn't see me at first. Or maybe she did and just didn't want to. They strolled up the aisle, eyes scanning for the front row seats. I saw the flicker of confusion when an usher intercepted them. Montgomery family? Yes, right this way. He led them, past the first rows. Past the second. All the way to the back. I watched their faces tighten. Gregory Montgomery leaned in, whispered something sharp to his wife. She frowned, but they followed anyway, settling into their chairs like royalty forced into coach class. My daughter glanced around, confusion on her face. She mouthed something to her husband, but he just shrugged. Oh, I savored it. Every second. From my seat up front, I could see everything. The Montgomerys squirming in the sunlight, trying to keep their smiles plastered on while the cameras panned across the audience. Their pearl necklaces and silk ties didn't look so impressive from the back row. The ceremony began. The mayor stepped to the podium, his voice booming over the crowd. He spoke about community, about legacy, about how this park was a gift of love to the town. The Montgomerys sat straighter, probably expecting to hear their names next. I saw Gregory nudge his wife as if to say, "Here it comes. Watch them honor us." But then the mayor said the words that made my chest swell. This park exists because of one man's devotion, not to wealth, not to status, but to love. To the love of a husband for his wife and a father for his family. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. People turned, looked at me. I stayed seated, calm, hands folded in my lap. The Montgomerys leaned forward, straining to hear. The mayor gestured to the cloth-draped monument. Today, we dedicate this space to Laura, a woman whose kindness touched every soul here. And thanks to her husband Jack, her spirit will live forever in this park. The cloth dropped. Gasps echoed. Cameras clicked. The granite stone gleamed in the sun, her name carved deep, my name carved right below. Permanent. Unshakable. And in the back row? The Montgomerys froze. Their smiles cracked. My daughter's eyes widened, her face pale. She finally saw me, not the landscaper, not the man beneath her class, but the husband who loved her mother enough to build something eternal. I didn't say a word. Didn't need to. Because the stone said it all. When the cloth fell and the monument gleamed in the sun, the crowd went silent. For a heartbeat, all I could hear was the wind in the trees, the rustle of leaves. Then the applause started, soft at first, then swelling until it roared through the park. I stood slowly. My knees ached, but my back was straight. The mayor motioned me forward, and I walked to the podium, every step heavy with 3 decades of sweat, sacrifice, and love. I looked out over the crowd. Old friends, neighbors, teachers, the people who had known Laura, the people who had known me. And in the very back, the Montgomerys. Their perfect smiles were gone. Gregory looked like he'd just swallowed a lemon. His wife's pearls suddenly didn't shine so bright. My daughter, she couldn't even meet my eyes. Her head was bowed, her hands clutched tight in her lap. I gripped the podium and let the silence settle. Laura, I began, my voice carrying clear, was the kind of woman who didn't care about class. Didn't care about money. She cared about people. If you needed a meal, she cooked. If you needed a friend, she listened. If you needed a hand, she showed up. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Heads nodded. People smiled. She was my wife, I continued, and for 20 years, my best friend. Together, we raised a daughter. We didn't have much, but we had love. And I swore to her, before she passed, that I would make sure our daughter had everything she needed. Every dance class. Every book. Every chance. My throat tightened. I paused, let the emotion swell, but not break me. I wasn't there to cry. I was there to stand. I turned slightly, letting my eyes land on the back row. I may not have been born with money, I said. I may not have estates or family names carved into marble. But what I do have is what this stone now carries. Love that doesn't fade. Love that doesn't bow to whispers. Love that doesn't get erased. The crowd clapped again. Louder this time. Some people stood. I heard cheers, whistles, a few shouted, "Amen." I raised a hand, quieting them. This park is for Laura. For the children who will laugh here. For the families who will walk these trails. For the community that remembers what real value is. Not in titles. Not in wealth. But in love. In sacrifice. In showing up when it matters. Now I looked directly at my daughter. She finally lifted her head. Her eyes were wet, shimmering with tears she didn't want to shed in front of everyone. I saw regret there. I saw shame. And for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered those words. You're not our class. And I knew this was exactly where I was meant to be. I finished strong. So let this stone stand, not just for Laura, but as a reminder. You cannot erase love. You cannot erase devotion. And you cannot erase a father who gave everything. The applause thundered. People rose to their feet. The sound rolled through the park like a wave. I stepped back from the podium, my chest rising with a steady breath. I didn't look at the Montgomerys again. I didn't need to. Their silence was enough. Their humiliation was carved in granite, on display for the entire town. And for the first time since that wedding night, I felt whole again. Not angry. Not broken. Whole. Because my name was in stone. And no one, no matter how rich, how smug, how high class, could take it away. After the ceremony ended, people came up one by one. They shook my hand, hugged me, told me how much Laura had meant to them. Some had tears in their eyes. Teachers told stories about how she stayed late at school to help kids who had nothing. Neighbors remembered her knocking on their doors with casseroles when their families were struggling. It felt like the whole town had wrapped its arms around me. For once, I wasn't the man sitting alone at the back table. I was exactly where I belonged. And the Montgomerys? They slipped out early. No speeches, no handshakes, no cameras chasing after them. Just quiet, stiff faces and the long walk from the back row. My daughter trailed behind them, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Later that evening, my phone buzzed. A text. From her. "Dad, can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time. My thumb hovered over the screen. I could have ignored it. Could have lit her up with the anger I'd been swallowing all those years. But instead I just typed back, "Whenever you're ready." We talked the next day. It wasn't an apology, not really. But it was something. She admitted she'd let them shape her, that she'd been wrong to push me aside. She cried. I listened. And though part of me wanted to slam the door, I couldn't. Because at the end of the day, she's still my daughter. But here's the truth, I didn't build that park for her. I built it for Laura. For myself. For the town that remembered us for who we really were, not the story the Montgomerys tried to rewrite. And in doing so, I learned something. Revenge doesn't always mean shouting or fists or fighting fire with fire. Sometimes it means patience. Playing the long game. Building something so solid, so permanent, that no one can ever erase it. The Montgomerys will keep their chandeliers and their country clubs. Let them. Because every time they drive through town, every time they pass that park, they'll see the stone. They'll see my name. They'll remember that the man they thought wasn't their class left behind something they never could. I finally found peace. I live my days quietly now, surrounded by people who know my worth. People who never doubted who I was. People who, like Laura, measure a man not by his bank account, but by his heart. And that's all I ever needed. So, what do you think? Did I do the right thing? What would you have done if you were in my shoes? If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss more tales like this. Drop a like if you think I handled it the right way, and leave a comment telling me what you would have done. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Because trust me, sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. Sometimes, it's written in stone.